Imagine being able to look on your phone and see exactly when the next Mercury retrograde is happening instead of Googling it, forgetting about it, and wondering why you keep almost missing important meetings or your technology is just completely on the fritz. It's not a paper planner you're going to meticulously use for the first 3 weeks of the year and then completely forget about. It's not another app that you need to download. It's a simple digital calendar that you can easily add to the calendar you're already using on your phone with all the astrological info you need to know in one place. If you're listening to this and you're like, wow, this is the answer to my astrological prayers, this is exactly what I need, scroll down to the link in the description of this episode and get access to my 2024 digital calendar for the entire year for only €20 and 24 cents. I'll be adding special bonuses throughout the year only for calendar subscribers, so you don't want to miss out. Hello and welcome to this bonus episode of Life Forces podcast. If you're here for the first time, welcome. So happy to have you. Welcome back. If you've been with me this year, for the first year of the podcast, it's been such an amazing experience creating this for all of you. And I really appreciate anyone and everyone who's listened, left a review, given me feedback, shared it with a friend or someone that they thought this would be good for. So I appreciate all of you. And I'm so excited to see what comes next for the podcast and also for my business. I have so many things I'm going to share with you next year. Like, we're going to another level. It's going to be great. So I wanted to record this bonus episode for you all because, of course, we need to know what is happening in 2024 astrologically. So my intention is to give you an overview of the main things that are happening in 2024, astrologically speaking. And then I'm going to do my more typical quarterly forecast. So we'll do an overview of 2024, and then we'll get into some more specifics of January, February, and March 2024. Yeah, all right. So the first major thing when we're doing an overview of the year is that the planet Pluto is back in the sign of Aquarius and it's sticking around. So Pluto, in the astrology that I practice, is considered the farthest planet in the solar system, and therefore it moves very slowly. I mean, this is right. There's a direct correspondence with the astronomy and the astrology in this case, right? It's a slow moving planet, Pluto, because it's so far away. So it's very much a generational kind of planet. So people that were born, plus or minus 20-ish years of you will have the same Pluto sign. So, for example, a lot of millennials have Pluto in Scorpio. So on January 21st, Pluto is coming back into Aquarius and sticking around because we had a little, let's say, preview of Pluto in Aquarius this year from March 23rd to June 11th. And so we had this first glimpse of Pluto in Aquarius, which Pluto as a planet, collectively speaking, has a lot to do with transformation, things coming to the surface, uncovering what's underneath, secrets that are emerging, showing us a certain type of collective shadow, like our collective darkness in one particular area. It can be about change, of course, and it can be about death. And it can often be the site of horror or fear, depending on the sign that it's in. Like, the sign that it's in will give us a bit of a flavor of that. So for the past 20 years or so, Pluto has been in the sign of Capricorn, right? And as I record this, Pluto is still in Capricorn. It's making its last passage through the sign of Capricorn. And a lot of what we saw with Pluto being in Capricorn is this transformation of big institutions in the world, governments, countries, the way that countries work, financial institutions, royalty, and how that has transformed, how our public perception of that may or may not have transformed. And it's interesting because, so for the most part of the year, we're going to have this Pluto and Aquarius vibe, which we'll get into, but Pluto will actually dip back a little bit into Capricorn from September 2nd to November 19th of this year. And I think that's a moment where we're going to see kind of like the last gasp of like certain institutions like crumbling and or being exposed for corruption or whatever it is. Because if we think of Capricorn as an earth sign, it has a lot to do with building up of resources in like a really public collective way. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So because Pluto is in Aquarius, Aquarius is an air sign. Aquarius has to do with humanity, the collective, and innovation. I really think that Pluto and Aquarius in general, this era that we're entering into, is going to transform, change our view of what humanity even is. Because Aquarius has to do with the collective, and because Pluto can be about things breaking down or being exposed, I think we're going to see certain social structures breaking down in a way, which on one hand could be scary, and Pluto can definitely bring some of the scary parts of things out to the surface. But on the other hand, it might be good because maybe there's certain social societal structures that aren't really working for us. I think also we're going to see more of an emphasis on individual power in some ways, for better or for worse, because Aquarius is this very like eccentric energy that's very much an individual. So I think we're going to see transformations in individual power. And I think we've kind of already seen that through, for example, technology and what it has afforded us, especially in the past few years, especially with pandemics and things going on in the world, and how, you know, people from their homes are able to have this power that they may not have had decades ago, right? Or decades ago, they would have had to been very much embedded or working with big institutions. Whereas now, in a way, a lot of the times technology can actually empower us to have more impact on a collective scale. So I mentioned technology, and I also mentioned technology having to do with Aquarius, and I also mentioned Pluto having to do with fears. So I think what's going to ramp up is our fears around technology, or in general, like non-human things that can cause harm to us, and also a fear of the future, right? So I think Pluto and Aquarius is going to bring up a lot of like dystopian kind of ideas. On one hand, it could just be in like popular culture, like more of a resurgence of movies or books or whatever with those kind of themes, or we might see some of that in real life. I'm not sure. Let's see. But for sure, you know, last year for the period, I'm saying last year, I'm still in 2023. There's been parts of 2023 with Pluto and Aquarius where, you know, AI has ramped up and it's become more invasive and it's become more a part of our everyday lives. Some people really love it. Some people really don't like it, you know, and the whole AI conversation was a big part of the SAG-AFTRA strike that took place for, what was it, like 5 or 6 months this year, right? And interestingly, while Saturn was retrograde, but that's another story for another time. So let's see how it's all going to unfold, right? On one hand, we can be in this like techno utopia where we really focus on how technology can make our lives better, because of course it can. Or, you know, is it going to transform things for the worse? You know, I think we're going to see that dichotomy really play out. And, you know, for example, there are some aspects of AI that can be very good and helpful. Like for some people, it really helps them in their work. It can help them do things quicker. I, you know, have a friend that does programming stuff, and, you know, she's able to just like get the code she needs quicker, right? Like, okay, that's cool. So there's that part of it. But then there's the other part where, like, is it going to replace the human touch, the humanity in certain things, and make everything boring? Like, that's part of my fear around it, right? And I think we're also going to have new political structures and parties. Like, from that Pluto and Capricorn moving into the Pluto and Aquarius phase, right? Aquarius collective. So what new forms of power are going to emerge in this time, right? With things changing in such an interesting way. And I mean, let's see also if we figure out, how to have free, sustainable energy, because why shouldn't we, right? And that could be a plus of this Pluto and Aquarius time, right? Aquarius is about these amazing innovations in science or in other fields. So let's have that. The last Pluto and Aquarius, there was the Industrial Revolution. Like, that's a big deal, right? That changed so much. So moving on from Pluto and Aquarius, which we're going to see really unfold in 2024. Another major thing that's happening is we have Jupiter conjoining Uranus and Taurus. So remember, a conjunction is when two planets come together at the exact same point in the sky, at the exact same degree, and then their energies blend together and create something different, bigger together. So on April 20th, Jupiter is going to join up with Uranus in Taurus, and this only happens every 14 or 15 years. The last time was in 2010. So you could maybe look back to 2010 and see if anything like what I described happened. So Jupiter has to do with beliefs, optimism, expansion, growth. Uranus is sudden changes. It's this electric energy. It can be a bit unpredictable. It can push things forward. It can be a bit rebellious. It can be very sudden and spontaneous. So if we think of those things together, there could be this amplified optimism, right? There could be this really breakthrough energy. Finally, you're able to just bust out of whatever was keeping you stuck, for example. It's a time where we might be able to step outside our norms. If I'm normally doing things one way, I suddenly have the courage to do it another. There might be opportunities that come your way really quickly, right? Uranus, its energy is quite quick, even though it's a slower moving planet, let's say, because it has this electricity about it. It rules our nervous system, for example. So the opportunities that come aren't going to last forever. You need to grab onto them. And yeah, a big time for innovations and big steps forward in technology. Uranus has to do with technology. Because we're dealing with the sign of Taurus. Taurus is a fixed earth sign. It has a lot to do with natural resources, the material world, money. So we might have some sudden changes in those things, sudden changes in our material world, sudden changes when it comes to nature and natural resources, and also our financial systems. So let's see how that plays out. The next thing we have is May 25th. Jupiter is moving out of Jupiter is moving out of Taurus. I got ahead of myself, and is moving into the sign of Gemini. So Jupiter in Gemini is what we call in detriment. So it's in the opposite of its home sign, which is Sagittarius. So it's not its favorite place to be. And so if we think about Jupiter, as I explained, having to do with growth, with expansion, with emphasizing and stretching out certain things, with beliefs. If we think of it in the sign of Gemini, which is an air sign, has to do with communication, curiosity, it moves quite quickly, it's a lot of information at once. We can think about this Jupiter and Gemini period as probably a time where there's going to be a lot of different information proliferating. It will probably feel like things are speeding up quite a bit, because Jupiter being in the sign of Taurus can be more about a slower pace or slower growth that's maybe more sustainable. Jupiter and Gemini can also offer a great opportunity for mind expansion, right? Curiosity, intellect. But the thing with Jupiter and Gemini energy is that we could get so inspired by so many different ideas that maybe we don't execute all these ideas, or it's just a lot of talk and not a lot of action. And you might have all this stuff coming to you, but you might not actually be able to do it all, right? Because Jupiter can also exaggerate and it can also over promise, right? So Jupiter and Gemini can be like, oh my God, okay, I came up with this idea and this idea and that idea, and I got to do them all, and we're going to start tomorrow. Okay. And then tomorrow comes, do you do anything, right? Let's see. So if we think of all this information coming through on a collective level, we might get really overstimulated. We might feel like there's too much information, or there's not really anything that's interesting, or there's so many interesting things that it just all becomes a blur. There's just like a lot of noise, right? This reminds me of, so I'm no longer on Twitter, but this reminds me of a tweet that I likely tweeted around 2019 or 2020 before I quit the platform once and for all, which I don't regret that decision at all. I'm very proud of myself for making that decision. I think it was after I took a short break from it, I came back and I tweeted, Twitter is too loud, or like, you're all too loud, quiet. You know, it's that kind of vibe. And interestingly enough, Twitter in its natal chart has a lot of Gemini energy. I forget, I think it has, I don't think it's Jupiter and Gemini. Maybe it's Mars and Gemini, which is very accurate, right? Because on Twitter, now known as X, a lot of people, you know, fight, which can be very Martian with words, right? So let's see. It's going to be a time where it's really important to have boundaries when it comes to taking in information, because, you know, we already can see that in the media, social media, however we engage with the world, more or less, if it's through some kind of platform or authority, there's this polarization happening, right? Like, it's either like these people are right, these people are wrong, or the opposite. And just there is increasingly less and less nuance, or less and less nuance that's celebrated or really like parsed out, right? It's easier and it's more enticing to just see arguments, or to just think that person's wrong, I'm right. So it's going to be a big time where we need to be super discerning. We need to lean into our discernment when it comes to what information we're taking in, because truly we're taking in information all the time, right? Through our senses, how a room smells, what we see. And, you know, in the 21st century, a couple decades in, with all the technology and how reliant most of us are on it, there's always a lot to take in. Like, we learn so much without realizing it. So it's going to be really important to probably unplug sometimes. I've been even feeling this lately, like, you know, sitting here in early December, that, you know, once I finish my work for the day, it's hard for me to like take in more information, whether that's from a podcast or a show. Like, it's getting harder for me, or even to read a book. Like, I kind of just want no more information in my head. So the last time Jupiter was in Gemini, just for reference, is in 2012 to 2013, June 2012 to June 2013, just to be specific. So I invite you to think about what was going on at that time in your life. Did you feel overwhelmed by information? Did you get a lot of ideas? Did you act on those ideas? That was definitely a really pivotal time in my life. That was my last year of university. And I definitely felt like all this possibility in me, but also, you know, not so much decisiveness on which direction to go. So think about that. Think about June 2012 to June 2013 and what was going on in your life. So we're going to have eclipses in Aries and Libra, and you can go back to, I think it was my Q3 or Q4 episode. Q3, I think it was. Q4. Oh my God. I don't know, guys. The Qs confuse me sometimes. I'm pretty sure it's Q4. But anyway, go to the link in the show notes and I will put the episode where I speak a lot about the lunar nodes, the North Node in Aries and the South Node in Libra, because this is what these eclipses are about for the rest of this year. So in March, we have a lunar eclipse in Libra that I'm going to get to when I speak about March. And then in April, we have a solar eclipse in Aries, which is really going to reveal a lot more about what this eclipse portal is showing us. I don't always love using the word portal because to me it has a lot of like spiritual connotations that are a bit like confusing or strange or whatever. And you guys know that I like to make things very practical, but I use portal in like quite a literal way of just like this opening, right? This like opening of possibilities in your life. Like that's what eclipses are. So we're going to see around April 8th what the North Node in Aries is telling us, what it's continuing to tell us. So that's something to look out for. And if we think of Aries energy, it has so much to do with the individual, with being pioneering, with taking action, with being decisive. So think about that, especially around the beginning of April 8th, around this solar eclipse in Aries. That is what we're collectively moving towards. We're collectively moving towards more of an emphasis on the individual and less of an emphasis on codependency, people pleasing, and being indecisive. So then the next major thing we have is in August, which we have another more rare planetary configuration. This one only happens once every 10 years, approximately. So we have Jupiter square Saturn. So this Jupiter in Gemini square Saturn in Pisces. So remember, Jupiter as a planet is really enthusiastic. It wants to grow and explore and it's excited. And then Saturn as a planet tends to put the brakes on a little bit and be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Are you sure about that? I'm thinking of, what's that guy? Tim Robinson? Is that his name? I feel really embarrassed if I get this right or wrong. The guy that has the show, I Think You Should Leave. I think it's Jim Robinson. This is so embarrassing. I feel like a boomer. Doesn't matter. But like he has in probably more than one of his skit, he says like, are you sure about that? You sure about that? Anyway, I'm going on a weird tangent. I don't know what's happening. Okay. Doesn't matter. Saturn, restriction, boundaries. Jupiter doesn't like that. Jupiter is the life of the party. It wants to explore. It wants to grow. It wants to meet everyone and do all the things, especially with Jupiter in Gemini, right? So Saturn and Pisces forming this square to Jupiter in Gemini is almost putting a bit of the brakes on Jupiter and is like, okay, Saturn's like, okay, you want to grow in this way, Gemini. You have all these amazing ideas. You're curious about this. You want to explore this. What are you actually going to do, right? Saturn likes to test us. A lot of people don't like that, or a lot of people aren't ready for those kind of tests. But Saturn just wants to make sure that whatever you're doing is solid. And remember, Saturn in Pisces, just generally speaking, is showing us structure, boundaries, limits when it comes to all things Pisces, right? So this is spirituality, religion, drugs, any form of transcendence, creativity, merging together. And it's also like very much the end of a cycle, right? Because Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. So it's kind of the end of a cycle. So a lot of what we've seen with Saturn and Pisces is like seeing whether or not certain people in the spiritual community have integrity, seeing the limits with things like drugs, seeing the limits with things like religion and that sort of thing. So just something to keep in mind when we think about Saturn in Pisces, which has been happening since March 2023. So then we have the solar eclipse in Libra on October 2nd. So another eclipse season happens in the fall during Libra season. So we'll see how that all shakes out. We'll see what happens in terms of like, is codependency, is overdependency on other people going to be highlighted? Are we asked to step more into our independence? Let's see what happens. So before I get into the rest of the forecast, I want to tell you about something I'm going to be a part of in January. Not only am I sharing my 2024 calendar with all of you, but I'm also going to be a part of the 21-day Raise Your Vibration online group program led by Anna Flossom. She is an incredible yoga teacher, health coach, chef. I've practiced with her before. She's amazing. And she's brought together some really sweet people to lead you through 21 days of transformation. You can expect yoga, breath work, moon rituals, masterclasses, food stuff, resources, a supportive community, and so much more. And I'm going to be adding some astrological magic to the program, and I'm really looking forward to it. We start on the new moon in Capricorn, which is January 11th. So if you're interested, go to the link in the description of this episode for more information, and I hope to see some of you there. So then getting to the end of 2024 already in our overview, on December 6th, we have Mars retrograde in Leo, which is going to spill over into 2025. So this Mars retrograde in Leo is going to be opposite Pluto in Aquarius, which will be very interesting. So let's see how that plays out. Let's see if there's any power struggles that you personally experience, that you see with people around you, in the world, in society. Let's see. So Mars retrograde is always about reevaluating our actions and doing like maybe more difficult internal work, like reconfiguring just the idea of how we go about doing things, right? Mars is action. Mars is our drive. Mars is what propels us forward, helps us defend ourselves, all that good stuff. And so the last time Mars retrograde was in Leo was 2008 to 2009. So think about, the period of those couple of years. What was going on in your life? Did you have to do things differently? Were you doing things one way, taking action another? And there was this period where you had to re-figure out how you went about doing things. My Mars is in Leo, so I'm a little afraid about this, except for it's not really happening in the same degrees as my Mars. So it'll still affect me because, of course, it'll still affect everyone depending on where Leo is in your chart, but it's not right on top of my Mars. So let's hope it's not that harsh. But I did notice, what was it? I thought I wrote this down, but my birthday next year. So my birthday is July 14th. I'm a Cancer. And my birthday next year is like right before some crazy Mars-Uranus thing happening on the 15th. Yeah, I'm not going to plan anything like super chaotic for my birthday next year by the looks of it. Let's see. Okay. So the final thing I just want to point out is on December 24th, we have another exact Jupiter-Saturn square. So again, like another reality check at the end of the year on Christmas Eve, like, hey, are all these things you're enthusiastic about gonna work? Is all this information you've been taking in integrity or not? Something to think about. Okay, so now we are going into our quarterly overview, going a little more in depth into January, February, and March 2024. So on the 1st or 2nd of the month, depending on what time zone you're in, let's just say for sure by January 2nd, Mercury retrograde is over, my people. Okay. Mercury is direct, stations direct in the sign of Sagittarius. So what I invite you to do is think about what insights came to you in this retrograde period on the level of beliefs, truths, spiritual understanding, what practical thoughts crossed your mind when it came to long-term goals and ambition. Because if you remember, Mercury spent its retrograde in both Sagittarius and Capricorn, right? It started in Capricorn and then went so far back in Capricorn that it ended up in Sagittarius. So it's like this, on one hand, reevaluating beliefs and things like this, and then also more like long-term goals and ambition. So whereas you might have had some like disagreements, miscommunications, confusing things happening during the holiday season, by the 1st, by the 2nd for sure, things are clearing up. Things are moving a little quicker. Mars in Sagittarius is very, direct in its communication. It can be a little quick to judge, so something to be mindful of. But yeah, on the level of communication, things are getting a little bit easier already on January 2nd. So then Mars moves into Capricorn on January 4th, right? Mars is the planet of action, of drive, as I explained. So in Capricorn, our actions are probably going to be a lot more methodical. This is a really great time to put effort into your long-term goals. Think about what big moves that you need to make to achieve your vision for 2024, right? We're at the start of the year. Let's think big. Capricorn is about long-term, building a legacy. Think about those big moves, and then also how can you hold yourself accountable, right? Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, Daddy Saturn, here to keep us in order, to do things methodically, to not rush, and to take our time. So something to keep in mind there. Then we have the new moon in Capricorn on the 11th, which to me is a great opportunity to really ground into your intentions for the year. What goals do you have, and where can you invite in more discipline, right? Capricorn is just such a disciplined, responsible sign and energy. So it's a really great time to get into that in a big way. So specifically about this new moon, it's squaring the nodes. It's squaring the North Node in Aries and the South Node in Libra, which I feel like anytime there's something squaring the nodes, there's a bit of like a karmic urgency to it. So it's like, okay, really good time to check in with like what you individually want to achieve and build, what you're moving towards, right? It's a time where that's going to be put into focus. And then I like Saturn's configuration here. We always look at the ruler, the planetary ruler of the sign that a full or new moon is in. So Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, new moon in Capricorn. The Saturn in Pisces is forming a sextile to Mars and Jupiter. So this is a very supportive configuration. So it's like our actions have a lot of solidity if we're, setting these intentions accordingly. And also like Jupiter is there to also push us forward in a nice way. So that's cool. So then we got more Capricorn energy happening, right? So more responsibility, more being grounded, more thinking about how we're managing our resources in a big way, how we're being responsible, how we're out there in the world doing things. So if you didn't methodically set all your intentions for at least the next 6 months on the new moon in Capricorn, when Mercury moves into Capricorn on the 14th, it's a good opportunity to take some time to make a plan of your long-term goals for the year. Continuing with that, because, for example, like during Mercury retrograde at the end of 2023 in December, when it was in Capricorn, maybe you were reviewing your 2023, right? And thinking about what went well, what didn't go well, what can I do differently? Now's the time to really feel into what you can do differently. It's a good opportunity to discuss your career with people, to think about your career, to think about your legacy, big things like that. it might be a great time to ask for a raise as well, if you're in a position to do that. So I'm not getting into so many planetary configurations in this forecast. It's more about sharing with you the main things, like, you know, where Mercury's moving, where Venus is moving, when the seasons are changing, things like that. But I did make a note of a few transits. So for example, on the 19th, we have Venus in the sign of Sagittarius, making a square to Neptune and Pisces. So this configuration can result in some confusion in our relationships. Like Venus and Sagittarius, I just picture as someone who's like, yeah, you know, we're just having a good time, aren't we? Whereas Neptune and Pisces is like, oh, I thought this was more, right? Pisces is such a romantic energy. Sagittarius, not so much. Sagittarius wants to have fun. So, you know, thinking about this in a more fun way, it could be a day where, like, you know, one person in a more casual relationship is just like, yeah, I'm loving this situationship. And then the other person is like, oh, I'm really like catching feelings. I'm speaking so generally. Let's see what happens. I just like exploring those kind of archetypes. So, okay, we also have the Sun forming a conjunction to Pluto and Capricorn. Sun and Pluto meeting up. Sun, our essence of what's happening. Pluto, deep transformation. Sun and Pluto together, stuff's happening. So the Sun and Pluto forming a conjunction in Capricorn right before Aquarius season. It's kind of the last little moment of Pluto and Capricorn stuff, aside from later in the fall of 2024. But I think because, especially, you know, it's in 29 degrees 59, it's like literally the last second of Pluto and Capricorn for now. So it's like this crucial moment, this final gasp, this uncovering, this illumination, right? The sun illuminates of this Pluto and Capricorn stuff. So let's see what emerges around January 20th. Let's see. Could be some scandals. So then on the 20th of January, Aquarius season begins. Remember, Aquarius energy, it's air, it's fixed air. It can be a little bit stubborn and a know-it-all, but generally it's a humanitarian energy. It's eccentric, innovative, community-oriented, peaceful. It wants to be free to express itself. It's unconventional, and it's very forward and future thinking. So Aquarius season is a great time to think about what groups you're a part of. Are you satisfied with your level of involvement in these groups? Are there communities you'd like to join, communities you'd like to create? Would you like to contribute more to your surroundings, to humanity at large? How can you do that, right? Then on the 21st, the day after Aquarius season starts, we have Pluto moving into Aquarius, which I explained earlier in the episode because it's quite a major part of the year. So again, when Pluto changes signs, it's really a paradigm shift because Pluto is such a slow moving planet. It really can set the energy for what kind of collective transformations we're having. So again, a lot of transformations on the level of technology, society, humanity on the whole. So then on the 23rd, Venus moves into Capricorn. So Venus is all about how we relate to each other and our values. We might find that we're more determined in relationships. Capricorn is a very determined, hardworking energy. We might want to commit deeper to someone or something that we value. We might be more protective of our relationships. And it's a good time to think about discernment in how we relate to each other. You know, Saturn, which rules Capricorn, is really big on boundaries. So it's like, do you need to set boundaries in any relationships in your life currently? I'm going to take a little sip of water because I've been talking quite a lot. Oh my gosh. Okay. So then on the 25th, we have our first full moon of the year, and it's the full moon in Leo, right? Leo, opposite sign to Aquarius, so much to do with self-expression, warmth, confidence, leadership. Because this full moon is opposite Pluto and the sun is pretty much still very conjunct Pluto, as it just moved back into Aquarius, I think this full moon is actually going to uncover a lot. And it's squaring Jupiter and Taurus. So let's see, there could be some like overdoing involved, some uncovering. Great time to celebrate your own individuality, your self-expression, and anything that comes from the heart, because Leo rules the heart. And our last couple events for January is we have Uranus stationing direct in the sign of Taurus. We had Uranus retrograde from August 28th, 2023, ending now on January 27th, 2024. So Uranus retrograde can in some ways be a bit easier collectively, because that sometimes chaotic, sudden happenings energy of Uranus is a bit more inward and a little less outward. So notice if you feel like wonky energy like a few days before and a few days into it, like around the 27th, as it's stationing direct. And yeah, definitely a time where we're going to see changes and unexpected events, rebellion in all different ways. Let's see how that happens. So now let's get into February 2024. So for both February and March, all planets are direct. This is very much all systems go. Generally, things should work as they normally do. So in February, all the inner planets, meaning not the outer ones, right? So meaning Mercury, Venus, Mars, for example, shift to Aquarius in Aquarius season, right? We're getting into big ideas, reimagining humanity, innovation, embracing the collective. So on the 5th of February, Mercury moves into Aquarius, the planet of communication, mental processes, all that good stuff. So here, logic will definitely be emphasized, more rational discussion and, truth and honesty and integrity. There's also a great opportunity for innovation with Mercury in Aquarius, innovative ideas. Then on the 9th, we have the new moon in Aquarius, which is squaring Uranus. So definitely this will bring some bold new starts or disruption in the collective. So, disruption can sound scary, but it also can just mean new exciting things that are actually useful to us, right? Then on the 13th, Mars moves into Aquarius. So this isn't the strongest position for Mars, right? Planet of action. It's interesting. Like, our actions might be motivated more by like ideas or what we're thinking about. And it could be about, social justice-y kind of stuff with Mars in Aquarius, because Aquarius has to do with the collective. On the 14th, Mars conjuncts Pluto in Aquarius, which could be very interesting, certainly very powerful energy. If you really want to like get things done or go deep into something, the 14th of February is a great time for that. And also, it's Valentine's Day, right? February 14th. And let's not forget that Mars can also be about sexual energy, Pluto too. So good time for that kind of stuff on Valentine's Day. Then on the 16th, Venus moves into Aquarius. So, it's about spreading the love and the, niceties far and wide beyond just our family unit or close friends or our partner. Then on the 19th, we have Pisces season beginning with the sun moving into the sign of Pisces. It's the end of the cycle. We're getting up to the end of our astrological year, which begins with Aries season, which is the first sign of the zodiac. So remember that Pisces is a water sign. So I'm sure emotions will come up and be highlighted throughout Pisces season. Pisces is ruled by Neptune, which is this planet that's very creative, dreamy, imaginative, spiritual, compassionate, sensitive, all-encompassing, often very self-sacrificing, sometimes a little bit escapist. You know, it has this amazing creativity and romance to it, but then sometimes it wants to escape in a not so helpful way, in a way that's completely disconnected from reality. I mean, sometimes we do need to completely disconnect from reality, but other times it's like, okay, let's get our feet on the ground. But the fact that Saturn is in Pisces helps with this. It helps mitigate the like floating in the sky energy of Pisces. So yeah, you might also find Pisces season to be quite a spiritual time for you. You feel like you merge more with others. You feel like you feel what other people are feeling more. For example, with Mercury in Pisces as of the 23rd, maybe your mind feels much more imaginative, unstructured, sensitive. There's more flow to how your mental processes work. And then concluding February, this was a quick one, we have the full moon in Virgo on the 24th, right? Remember, we always have the full moon in the opposite sign of the astrological season. So Virgo is the opposite sign of Pisces. This full moon is opposite Saturn, right? Which brings more stability and solidity, and opposite Mercury. So it's this interesting thing, because Virgo, while it's an earth sign, is ruled by Mercury, right? So it's like, has this interesting way of communicating that wants to be very grounded and practical, right? Virgos historically are quite organized. They're quite interested in things like health and routines. So you might find here on this full moon in Virgo that emotions bleed into conversations, but then like Saturn is there to be like, maybe not. There might be some communication issues. Because the moon is opposite Saturn, you might feel really like alienated. And the moon in Virgo can be quite anxious. Virgo can be anxious energy. And as someone with a native moon in Virgo, I can understand that. So there might be some anxiety coming up for you. So just like notice it and examine it and ask it what it needs, for example. And see also where, because the moon is opposite Saturn, where your responsibility, which is more a Saturnian thing, balances out with your emotions. Can they work together in harmony? So now we're moving on to March 2024. As I said, this month also has all planets direct. There's no Mercury retrogrades or other retrogrades harshing the vibe. So that's nice to deal with. So on the 9th of March, we have Mars in Aquarius squaring Uranus and Taurus. So anytime we have like a Mars-Uranus thing, it can mean like sudden actions that are a bit crazy and chaotic, right? And with Mars in Aquarius, so this is, you know, collective actions, and then Uranus and Taurus could be sudden changes in the environment or when it comes to resources. Maybe something happens where, you know, in the collective, there's like suddenly a change to how we deal with money or how we deal with natural resources. So something to keep in mind there. Then on the 10th, we're still in Pisces season, but we have Aries season on the horizon, Aries energy coming in. On the 10th of March, Mercury moves into Aries. Here we have very direct speech, more clear thinking, right? Aries is ruled by Mars. So it just like goes for it. It's just taking the action. It's just doing the thing. So you can probably see that maybe in some ways you're making quicker decisions when Mercury is in Aries. On the same day, on the 10th, we have the new moon in Pisces, which is totally conjunct Neptune. So it's like super new moon in Pisces, super vibey, sensitive, romantic, maybe. Any new moon is a great time for setting intentions. So here, focus on setting intentions for spirituality, connection, healing, forgiveness, and compassion. And because Neptune is really in the mix here, I think this new moon in Pisces on the 10th, there's really great opportunities to have transcendent experiences. So if you were going to do anything remotely spiritual, go on a retreat, go on some kind of journey of a spiritual nature, like around the new moon in Pisces, should be pretty good, but be careful with that Mars square Uranus. So maybe don't do something like so crazy out of your routine, or if you do, just be like very careful that all like the safety nets are in place for you. Yeah, just had to double check that. It's like Mars square Uranus is still kind of happening. Okay. But maybe that provides an opportunity to have like very new, bold spiritual experience as well, which is cool. Okay, so then on the 11th, Venus moves into Pisces. This is the most romantic Venus placement. So great time to, show how much you care for someone else with something like poetry or something very artistic. Here we might feel like we're merging into each other more. We really feel that like spiritual connection, but definitely be mindful of delusion, illusion when it comes to relationships. If you're in the early stages of something, be really clear with your communication and don't just get lost in dreamland unless you want to, but maybe you'll have a rude awakening. I don't know. So on the 17th, we have the sun conjunct Neptune. So the sun, what's illuminated, what's being primarily expressed is merging with Neptune, which can make things really fuzzy. It is dreamy time. It's a good time to just zone out a little bit. Don't do anything super serious. Don't do anything that's going to require a lot of mental focus. Do something creative. Make time for daydreaming. Yeah, do something fuzzy feeling, if that makes sense. So then finally, on the 20th of March, we have the spring equinox. We have the sun in Aries. It's the start of a new cycle. It's the astrological new year. Things are starting to blossom. New energy is coming into the ether. We finish up Pisces season ruled by Neptune, which is very like dreamy and feeling everything and etheric. And then bam, back to fire energy, back to cardinal energy, which is so much about initiating, back to a Mars ruled season, which is so much about like doing and being bold and independent. So, it's a great time to get back to your passions. Maybe you're going to be a little impatient. Maybe you're going to be a little impulsive, but likely you'll feel some confidence and courage, especially in the area where Aries is in your chart, depending on what house that's falling into. So then on the 21st, the day after, we have Venus conjunct Saturn in Pisces. So this could be a big reality check for your relationships. Are you sure about where you stand with them? Or are you just like getting into this like projection and fantasy land? So Saturn in Pisces is going to come help Venus like, let's get the reality check going with how our relationships are, whether they're romantic, friendship, otherwise. So then on the 22nd, we have Mars moving into the sign of Pisces. So here, our actions are a bit more flowy, non-linear, maybe more emotionally motivated actions and drive. And it's also a great time to defend the vulnerable people, animals, whatever in your life, because Pisces is such a compassionate energy, right? So then concluding March, we have eclipse season starting, the first little peek into it for 2024. We have a full moon / lunar eclipse in Libra. So again, with the South Node in Libra, we are collectively shifting away from some of the problematic things that can emerge in Libra energy. And just to be very clear, like, we can have problematic or shadow aspects in any sign in astrology. I'm not like singling out Libras, right? But here, be really mindful of and notice what you want to release, especially when it comes to how you're relating with people. Any sort of codependency, people pleasing, indecision, your relationship to balance. Like, are you trying so hard to be balanced that you're not going for the things that you want to go for? So really, I encourage you to look to where Libra is in your chart for more clues about what is being asked of you in terms of release. What are you being asked to let go of? What are you being asked to move away from a little bit? Yeah. And yeah, so, we conclude March building up to that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that I spoke about in the 2024 overview. So yeah, things are about to get interesting by Q2 and in the rest of 2024. So yeah, see you back here in a few months for that. Thank you so much for listening. And again, I'm going to have so much for you in 2024. I didn't mention this at the beginning of the episode, but I'm collaborating with Leavely on monthly astrology worksheets, which are going to be so beautifully designed that you can like print out if you want something more tactile. If you're maybe missing the paper planner that I've made for the past 2 years, that's for you. And it will be a great complement to the digital calendar that I'm releasing. You can get more information about both of those if you go to the episode description and find the links there. And yeah, I really appreciate your support. Thank you for listening to the end. Love all of you so much. I'm wishing you all the best for 2024. You might be listening to this at the end of 2023. So I hope everything wraps up in a way, or you're at least able to slow down a little bit and enjoy time by yourself or with people you love or whoever it is. And yeah, I can't wait to see what the new year has in store for us. Bye.